Cheryl Dorsey is a retired Los Angeles Police Department sergeant and joins me now. She is also the author of Black and Blue Volume 2, The Creation of a Social Advocate. And thanks so much for being here. I mean, what a week. I want to get to the substance of what has happened this week. Very detailed, very dramatic testimony. For the jury, though, it all still boils down to, do you believe this police officer was responsible for the death of George Floyd? How clearly do you believe that case was made?
I think the prosecution has done an amazing job of layering all of the bricks, if you will, in this storyline. You have police supervisors from the first patrol sergeant on scene all the way up to the chief of police speaking on training and what is expected of their officers, and how Derek Chauvin deviated from his training and how unreasonable and unnecessary the use of force was. And then couple that with medical professionals who were on scene. These are trained EMS workers, off-duty firefighter, very different from the emotional testimony that we heard from the civilians in the first few days of the trial, who spoke of wanting to intervene and being denied.
In terms of what our analysts have already been pointing out throughout the week, it's that solidarity of police officers seem to have been so categorically challenged, and at the highest levels, even the police chief. Why do you think that is?
Well, part of it is because we all saw what we saw, and this is not anything that even the police chief was going to be able to minimize and mitigate, and that's why Derek Chauvin was fired so quickly. Listen, they're still in damage control. They had to pay that family $27 million in a settlement, mind you, to prevent going before a jury in a civil case and having a jury give the family much more than that. And so they had no other alternative but to come to court. And once they raised their hand and swore to tell the truth under the penalty of perjury, they had to speak to the fact that everything that we saw, everything that they saw violated their policy, and therefore they had to speak truthfully about it.
Which brings me to my next point, though. When we look at what's gone on, and again, it's just been the prosecution putting forward their case so far, do you feel, though, that from what we've already heard, that this could profoundly change policing?
I don't think that it's going to profoundly change policing. Listen, the system does what it's designed to do. And, even though the police chief and his commander and his lieutenant and his sergeant all spoke truthfully, they don't get any brownie points from me, because it's not like any of them didn't know who Derek Chauvin was. This is a 19-year veteran of that department with 18 personnel complaints. And so each of them have progressed up the ranks, the police chief included. Knowing who Derek Chauvin was allowed him to remain in patrol, allowed him to live to offend again, complaint after complaint. And it wasn't until the death of Mr. Floyd that they finally decided to step forward and take action. Imagine what would have happened had they dealt with Derek Chauvin at personnel complaints 6, 7, 10, 12, 14. Mr. Floyd would still be here. And so nothing has changed nationally since this incident last May. There have been incidents all over the country where police are still using unnecessary force, using deadly force as a first resort rather than a last resort, as many of us are taught and trained. And so, depending on what happens ultimately in this case, people have short-term memory, and they'll go on and it'll be business as usual. And sadly, I'm afraid we will revisit this and we'll have another discussion with another name.
Oh, that is quite an indictment. We'll continue to follow the case and really appreciate your insights here. Cheryl Dorsey for us. Thanks so much.